I have been in the industry for 46 years. I've travelled the world. I've worked on some beautiful heritage projects all the way from New York to Borneo. It is an industry that will change your life. Before we produce anything in the fibrous plaster side of it, doesn't matter if it's manufacture of models and moulds or just a simple cornice moulding, the basic materials are casting lathe. There's different types of mould types. This is GRP. Hessian or jute scrim. This is a very loose weave material, as you can tell. It's not the same Hessian you use to coat brickwork to keep it damp. We need the plaster to get through the material. Plaster of Paris. You get plaster of Paris all the way from dental plaster all the way through to the softer beta plasters for what we use in fibrous plaster work. And the last thing is clean water. You do need to wear your dust masks, you do need to wear safety glasses, and of course before we mix the plaster and the water together, gloves. Matt's already applied the tallow, so we've got to that stage, but normally if you're just putting your tallow on, it's just, you don't want to let it build up in layers because you've got to remember at the end of the day the decorator's got to paint whatever you make. So if you've got too much tallow on it, the paint will just skid everywhere. So basically we put it on and take it off. Right, so fibrous plaster, we are going to use 2 gauges of plaster. They're going to have a firstings and a seconds. So we're going to put the first coat on whilst I'm talking to you. Well, I'll just keep going, ticking over, telling you the bits and pieces. Then we build up with the fabrics and put the second coat on, and then just give it a little finish. Right, so what we don't want to do is just dump it in. So we're just going to sprinkle. It's as easy as that, yeah? What we don't do as well is we don't mix it as we're putting the plaster in. If you start mixing it now and keep putting it in, you have no idea how much plaster content there is. Once it breaks the surface tension of the water and it's just mounding about 50%, that's a good gauge. If you don't put enough plaster in, it will not set. It will always stay cheesy. So what we're going to do now is 2 layers. So we don't hold the brush by the handle, just hold the brush further down and try to open the bristles up if you can. Casting plaster, plaster of Paris and water is a chemical reaction. And what we're going to do, as it starts picking up in time, it starts producing heat, which is an exothermic reaction. And what we want to do is want to make sure that the first coat that goes on is activated enough that it actually sets quicker. Once you've covered it all, if you run your fingers along the little arises just to get rid of any air bubbles. Make sure your brush is always fully loaded, and we want to give it 2 or 3 brushes over. Then we're going to get a nice even splash, yeah? And the trick is, it's a flick of the wrist, not trying to push the brush down, flick your wrist. So, the sides of the mould are called strike-offs. So what we're going to do is we're going to strike off the side. We want to form a 45 degrees, obviously wall and ceiling line, yeah, 45 degrees. So as long as we keep the strike-off clean, both sides, we are forming that 45 degrees. Obviously as well, we've put a tallow release agent on this, so what we want to do is push the tallow away on the first coat. So we're going to strike downwards, yeah. What we want to make sure is we clean the strike-off. What we don't want to be seeing is that if we lost the 45 degrees if we don't clean it off completely. So whilst we're waiting that for the pick up, remember I said it's a 15-minute set. Well, you ain't got 15 minutes, believe me, between coats, okay? So the second gauge is exactly the same consistency as the first gauge. You can imagine this is 400, 500, 600,000 years old, the whole system, nothing's changed. It's just the materials have slightly improved, but the system hasn't really changed. So remember, 2 coats, this is the firstings, we're now gauging up the seconds. In between the 2 is sandwich, the Hessian. When you're applying the Hessian, we want to make sure that we're very gentle with it initially. What you don't want to be doing is heavy-handed. If you go heavy-handed, you'll be surprised how much this is going to come through the face. We want to make sure, remember I said earlier that the Hessian is organic, so it will rot. So the idea being is we do not want to see any dry Hessian when we're finished. At this stage, we'd we'd put like a rope, a soaked rope underneath the lathe, or we'd actually put the lathes in a tank to soak them, or even throw a bucket of water over them on a day. What we don't want these doing is being very porous, but because it's just this show today, I ain't got time to, you know, to do too many things. So the idea really being there is this is the to take one, the mechanical fix if you're going to put a screw for it, but two, to help keep it shape. Yep. So the trickiest thing about casting cornice is this next stage, and it really is to roll the canvas over. And what you want to do is you want to pull the canvas up and get it a nice strike off. So we're going to make sure that we try to keep it down to the edge as close as we can. And then we'll just tip the lathe up to try to be parallel with the strike off. Now we want to get rid of all the dry canvas where possible, even though eventually we're going to give it a nice splash coat as well. So this time when we strike off, this time we strike upwards. Instead of striking downwards, we just strike upwards. But it's exactly the same, we must keep this clean. Yep. Because it's a smaller cornice, normally all we would ever do is just give it a very small rib. And what's good about it, it keeps its shape from opening up, but when your installers are trying to cut the miters, it gives it that extra strength. Yep. And we usually put these every 300 or 400 mil. Obviously, we're very proud of our heritage in the UK, and to pass on the craft skills is fundamental to keep all old buildings alive. There are more and more old buildings, there's more and more budgets, but there's less and less people that we can get involved in the industry. Basically, that's it. Yep. They say Plaster Paris has got a 15-minute set. The whole thing's only taken 15 minutes. And the first coat that we used went off within 6 or 7 minutes. So the minute you start activating any plaster, the minute you start activating it, your clock's ticking. What you don't want to do is lift it all up because it'll snap in the middle, but when you get to a stage, flip it on its edge.
Flip it.
That's it, and you flip it up. There you go. When you do carry a cornice, I'd say never carry it flat because it'll snap. Yeah, always carry it on edge. It's very strong on edge. Yeah?
I have a question. What's the strangest thing you've ever had to make?
The bulkhead to the spaceship in Guardians of the Galaxy.
What?
If anyone was asked me what they think about joining the industry, the craft, any heritage trade, is please do, and you will never be, you will never regret it, that's for sure. It's 46 years I've been doing the industry. Every day I'm giddy, bounce out of bed like Tigger, according to my wife. I just love the industry, and I've not yet met anybody who doesn't, who's involved in heritage, teaching and saving old buildings.